Hello there, welcome back. You will, I hope, forgive the slightly clickbait photo I used for the thumbnail of having Godzilla and Gamera invoked on such a video about Gorgo. But we are indeed here to talk about Britain's Godzilla, as the back informs us, Gorgo from 1961. We'll go into it, but although I rather cheekily did include this and this behemoth on the thumbnail, I wonder if the more apt thing to include would have been the same year's Konga. Because Konga, again, same year, 1961, was also essentially British answer to, well, not quite Kaiju, because it's clearly an answer to Kong. I mean, if you literally do this, it's called Kong. But Konga was the erstyle's British version of Kong. It's not a great movie, because Michael Gough doesn't want it to be. And Michael Gough, if he didn't like a movie script, he let you know it through his performance. He's the worst thing in Dracula. People have this great nostalgia for Michael Gough because he was Alfred in those Batman movies. Watch him in some of those 50s, 60s, 70s movies. He's terrible. Anyway, Gorgo is what we're actually talking about today. And just been released on 4K from Vinegar Syndrome. Let's get a better shot of that. So this artwork, if it looks reminiscent of the Gamera set, it's because Matt Franks indeed did both versions, did both box sets. This is gorgeous, and it's not clickbait cover. Gorgo does indeed destroy Big Ben, or what's it called, Saint something, because Big Ben's the actual bell. Just the Saint something tower. Who cares? Big Ben, fuck it. And there is indeed panic in the streets of London. So it's not clickbaity. Gorgo is that big and has red eyes. Some nice more covert artwork on the interior. And then, as is usual for these more limited 4Ks and whatnot, they give you an inner slip as well, which then reveals the film. Now this is slightly more accurate as to what Gorgo actually looks like. I mean, it's 1961, so Matt Frank's giving you the representation of what they would like it to be like. Yeah, you just roll with it. You do get a poster, as is Vinegar, so it must be deluxe. Watch the rule. That's right. Postcards or a poster make it a deluxe edition. And as always, they're double-sided because they never want you to actually hang them up, because you would lose half of it. However, it's rather wonderful. You get this one, which you think is a bit bland, really, isn't it? But then on the reverse, you get the anatomy of Gorgo, which is very similar to something that Matt did on the Gamera set. So really cool that he's still kind of doing that. This is a lovely companion piece, and better than the Godzilla set, dare I say, because Toho just tied Criterion's hands behind their back in terms of, oh, you can't make new extras. Oh no, we're not giving you the new restoration of Godzilla, you have to use the 10-year-old one. Luckily, we have the best restoration of this possible. It's on 4K, it looks absolutely wonderful. The film itself, Gorgo is a wonderful, wonderful kaiju film. Very British, but it was, although it's called the British Godzilla, it even says so on the back, it was an MGM picture. So it was made by, was it British Line? I don't want to tell lies to you. I don't think maybe it was British Line, but it was one of those kind of companies, but they made it with MGM money. So a bit like Bond. It's a British franchise, but a lot of American money was used. And that's very beneficial to the project because, frankly, it needs the money. It's a wonderful, tight little movie. it does the best things of a Godzilla film and does none of the worst things. And it's got a nice twist halfway through, and it's not a massive twist, so it's not like, oh, I've not seen it, I better turn it off. But essentially, we follow the first half of the film, maybe even 2/3, and then we realise the creature that's been causing all this havoc, and we think, well, it's not that big. That's the baby. And Mama's on the hunt. It's very British too. And anybody who's on this channel is a regular will no doubt know very much that appeals to my sensibilities in terms of character actors, in terms of going, I know that guy, he was in an Amicus film. Wait a minute, she was in Doctor Who. Isn't that the guy from Your Eyes Only? That kind of thing. And it's full of those kind of faces. The cast here, headed by Bill Travers, who would go on, quite funny here, he's a treasure hunter, and he's all for blowing hell out of these aquatic creatures, who would go on to be the face of animal preservation as the star of Born Free. And when he retired from acting quite young, that's what he took on as a lifelong vacation. He did a little bit of acting here and there to pay the bills, I'd imagine, but animal preservation became his thing. So it's a bit jarring at points to see him fully advocating the destruction of sea life. But there is a great message in this film. It doesn't obviously have the connotations of Gojira. So you can't go down the nuclear avenue, where this is created by nuclear weapons, and it's a response to Nagasaki and Hiroshima, because Britain wasn't involved in that. For all intents and purposes, VE Day ended the Second World War for the UK, not for America and Japan, of course. But they obviously decided, well, we have to have some kind of message here, and it is indeed about conservation. It's about be careful about what you go looking for, because you just might find it. So our treasure hunters here think they've hit pay dirt by having this wonderful aquatic creature that they've managed to wrap up in the little island off of Ireland. It's a fictitious Ireland, but it's a little island off the coast of Ireland. Craggy Island, one for the Father Ted fans. And the local fishing community think it's an ancient sea beast. It's not a kelpie, they're small, but and they're Scottish, but it's one of those kind of things. And the two passing sailors, treasure hunters, think they've hit pay dirt again by capturing this creature, and they're going to take it to London and sell it ostensibly to our what's his name in King Kong, Denby, Max Denby. That rings a bell. I'll go with Max Denby. Or is he Andrew Scott in Spectre? Oh well. Anyway, Robert Armstrong's character in the original King Kong, who wants to put on a show, essentially it kind of crosses into King Kong territory, where, why, I'll have my circus display this sea creature, and we'll make a few pounds that way. It's very very plummy in that regard. There's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of civil servants who are born at the age of 62. You can't do that. Why? Because I said so, and I'm British and talking this kind of voice. This is London calling all the ships at sea. One of those very British BBC voices of the 1950s. So that's our setup. Treasure hunters take the creature. It's been held at a carnival, a circus, whatever it may be, in London. And, sir, we've just detected something off the coast. Something rather large, rather green, and rather coming this way. And indeed, it does. And write the script from there. It is just mayhem, destruction, a little bit evocative of, oddly, things like Quatermass in the Pit, or, gosh, even prescient to Life Force, because you do see massive crowds going absolutely mental in London, and it is shot in London. They filmed very early on Sunday mornings in London, so it is Leicester Square. You actually get to see one of the cinemas is showing Hammer's The Mummy, just to really put it in context. There's plenty of great adverts for cigarettes and things. Smoke, It's rather good for you, and it gives you an interesting voice. It's very of the time in that regard, so it's kind of cool to see London. It's not just set in nameless Japanese city with just small fishing huts being destroyed and then some pagodas at the end. No, he's going after the landmarks. So a little bit behind the scenes. There's a great documentary on here. Has it got a name? Gorgo Lives. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Ninth Wonder World, The Making of Gorgo is the archival, and then there is a new commentary track, and there's a big long documentary, about 40 minutes long, about the film. And it goes into the conception. This was originally going to be set in Australia, and people, I have very close Australian friends. I never said this. They said nobody would care if Australia was destroyed, so we'd better change it to the UK. It's rather reversed now, hasn't it? Gosh, the UK would rather be destroyed. We're doing that ourselves, fucking Tories. Anyway, let's not get too political today. I'm in a rather good Sunday mood. So it goes into that and how the concept changed, and then, oh, well, that means we can do number 10 Downing Street, and we can have Gorgo at the, so they started just spitballing ideas. And, well, that means we can do Gorgo attacking Big Ben, and that'll be a lot more, there's your poster, exactly as you'd expect. But it works. It absolutely works. The creature is fantastic. Yes, of course, it's a guy in a suit. You can see it's clear as day, but that's part of the charm of watching these vintage versions and not CG. I mean, you can spot CG a mile away. What do you care? It's not as if there's any actual 300 feet tall lizards that you can cast. No, I thought of one there, but there isn't. So, this is as good as they could certainly do in 1961. To differentiate it from Godzilla, you don't have the kind of Google eyes, which would often be a little bit cartooning some Godzillas. But you do have these wonderful red eyes. Gives it a lot of menace. But it doesn't do anything stupid with it. It doesn't shoot out lasers or anything, There's no space Gorgo. There's no mecha Gorgo. Nothing like that. And there's also a little stowaway kid who sneaks away with Gorgo and has a kind of bond with it. He's kind of looking after it, but you never get anything clawing. It's never too cutesy. It's never too... there's not a scene where Gorgo stops the destruction just to rescue the kid or anything like that. So it doesn't go where the Godzilla films go, schmaltz. Gamera was always the protector of children after the first film. None of that. It's very much just this kid's got some kind of empathy for the creature, and again, what's the point? Nuts, but the end of the film, nobody dies, apart from all the nameless extras that have been stood on and whatnot. But however, nobody dies in terms of the main cast or Gorgo or the baby, and they just go back to the sea, and that's really the message. Just leave them alone. Leave them alone. So instead of doing the King Kong American thing of just shoot it down, and instead of doing the Japanese thing of turning it into an allegory and if we're not careful this will happen again, none of that. It does a very unique thing of just saying we got away with that, let's just learn our lesson. We haven't, as 60 years of animal extinctions have gone to prove. But so it's a wonderful, wonderful little film. I've got a lot of time for it. This is such a great restoration, the 4K. The extras here, I mentioned the documentary there, and I mentioned the vintage archival featurette, full of information. It's everything you'd want, apart from the wonderful Gorgo Lives, where Stephen Bissett, film historian and cartoonist, talks for 31 minutes about Gorgo in expanded media and in context, and it is brilliant. Stephen Bissett, he's like the coolest uncle ever. He's talking about all the comic books of Gorgo. Gorgo, where did I put it? Where did I put it? Ah, there it is. Gorgo and Konga had comic books. A whole series, and they've been resurrected in the 21st century. Steve Ditko, the legendary Marvel figure, worked on them. Reptilicus also had the Danish Godzilla also had. I should have pulled that Blu-ray out. Also had a series of comic books. Wonderful. So when people talk about kaiju and giant monsters, they tend to just stick to a few. And really, what Stephen goes into, is that Gorgo has a massive legacy away from that. And sure, some of it's just, hey, we can license that and it's very like Godzilla and it won't cost us as much and we don't need to deal with Toho. Konga lets you do the same without having to deal with Universal, blah blah blah. So, it's a nice way around, and then you can tell your own stories with those characters ostensibly standing in for Godzilla and Kong. So there are a series of comics in which Gorgo faces Konga. I need to read them. I need to read them. So yeah, he gets me really excited just about the film that I've just watched and about the franchise that I didn't know I needed. So yeah, it's wonderful. And then there's something called Waiting for Gorgo, a 20-minute short film from 2009, which is brilliantly meta. It's an actual film. It feels like a Bond film while you're watching the downstairs stuff from MI6. And a young agent comes into a room with two Q-looking fellows. I won't say who, because they are character actors of some note, if you know your faces. And proceeds to essentially get a little bit of a meta sequel to the film. I actually won't spoil that because I don't think people will have seen that. And it's wonderful. It's all set in one room with those three actors, and it's got a nice little coda. So yeah, brilliant little addendum, brilliant stuff. And then you get all sorts of video galleries, lobby cards, digital ones, press books, stills galleries, photos. You get a video comic book so you can read the actual comic adaptation, not the expanded ones unfortunately. So I'll be hunting some of them down. Hopefully they'll be compiled. So yeah, it's absolutely stacked. So it's just been released in the past few weeks from Vinegar Syndrome. Part of my midsummer blowout with Vinegar Syndrome was, you can see some of the other stuff sitting here. But this was the one for me. This was, while everybody else was losing their mind over certain titles, I was just really excited to get Konga on 4K of all things. But wonderful. I'm so glad that Konga is on 4K before Gamera and just before Godzilla. There is a 4K of Godzilla coming out in Japan from Toho Direct, but well, we'll see if they even bother porting that over anytime soon. Toho, what have you got against people licensing your stuff? Horrible. So anyways, while I spend the next 15 minutes trying to put everything back in its place, I'll let you away and enjoy your Sunday. And indeed, if you're not watching it on a Sunday, enjoy whatever day you're having. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your comments. State them below if you want. And if you don't, I'm not that fussed. I like talking to people, but I'm not going to cry myself to sleep if you don't comment. Complaints, though, I do love those. Because I can answer you back and still delete it if I really don't like you. Oh, I like you all, don't worry. I like you, except for you. Right. Till next time. Auf Wiedersehen.